Kliff Kingsbury hired as a senior analyst at USC. Joe, I will start off by saying this. I think it's a good hire. I don't think that there's any problem whatsoever. I think, in my personal opinion, USC got better yesterday when they hired Kliff Kingsbury. You cannot tell me that he does not know offense. You just can't. It's not as if he's on a on the field coach, right? Like he's not coaching quarterbacks. He's not on the field coaching them. What he really is going to be is he's going to watch film with quarterbacks during film study and breakdown, and he's going to be a right hand to Lincoln Riley. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. Yes. What I don't understand is why people are so angry at this pushback. Like, I guess
what do you mean by the pushback?
I just saw it on Twitter, like, ha, Kliff Kingsbury, ha, he's going to USC. Like, and Steve Sarkisian went to Alabama. Lane Kiffin went to Alabama. Pick your poison. Billy Napier was at Alabama. I mean, pick your poison. Coaches get fired. They got to go somewhere else. That's just how the world works.
The way that I look at this, and I guess I'm kind of in that camp, but not really. I just think that this is a nothing hire for both parties. And let's take it from the USC angle. Because Kliff did what he wanted to do. He's clearly just trying to coast for a little bit to stay out of the spotlight, which is the right thing to do. There's a very negative sentiment on Kliff Kingsbury right now because of the lack of success that he produced over the last 2 head coaching jobs that he had.
Right.
But for the University of Southern California, it's a nothing hire. Like it's fine. He's got good experience. He's worked with some good quarterbacks. He worked with Mahomes. He worked with Johnny Manziel. I get that. That is reputable experience of some guys that he's worked with. But I'm going to say it. Kliff is one of the most overrated coaches in all of football.
Coaches?
Just coaches. I think that he continuously has gotten so many extra chances. I know that he is a smart offensive mind, but if he was such a good offensive mind, why didn't he take an offensive coordinator job? Why is he taking this job? He lacks confidence or something along those lines. Is that what it is? I just don't see it with Kliff. I think Kliff is in over his head at this point. He hasn't produced results in the past 2 jobs that he's had.
I don't disagree, but being a subpar head coach doesn't mean you don't know offense. Doesn't mean that you can't be a massive asset to a team. They got better from the simple aspect of this. If Kliff Kingsbury's in the box, meaning the press box, or he's on the field, if you're Lincoln Riley and you don't see something and Kliff Kingsbury sees something, because regardless if you like it or not, they're from the same air raid system. They still have the same principles. I would even guarantee a lot of the same play calls are the same. They come from the same tree. It's different when Lincoln Riley hears on the headset from Kliff Kingsbury versus when he hears from maybe an assistant that he's not necessarily familiar with. Though his words will dictate things for, I think, Lincoln offensively that it might not do for other coaches. Meaning, I don't know who the running backs coach is. I don't mean this negatively. But if a running back coach sees something, Lincoln be like, yeah, shut up. In the back of his mind, he's always thinking, yeah, shut up. I already know that. But when Kliff says it, I think it just hits differently. Here's the thing, though, for me with Kliff. Again, you can make all the changes that you want to offensively. But unfortunately for USC, this man doesn't coach defense.
That's also part of where I'm coming at with this. Like this team, I'm going to be very blunt. This doesn't make the team better. It's nice. It's a nice thing to have to bring him in with what you just said. He's got a lot of experience. He's a good offensive mind. You can't have too many good coaches. And if it's in an analyst role, again, it's to the benefit of the program. But they didn't need to hire this. And it's just like when we talked about the Deuce Robinson thing. Cool. That's great. You added a good athlete. But why are we so focused on offense? The same problem, the same thing is going to continually be said about USC. And I'm going to scream it on this damn show every time something like this happens. hire a new defensive coordinator, hire better defensive coaches, recruit better defensively. USC is Oklahoma West, and they're going to continue to get dogged in the Pac-12 championship and in the playoff because they don't play defense. The real teams play defense. Georgia plays defense. Alabama plays defense. LSU plays defense. Michigan plays defense. Ohio State plays defense. USC doesn't care. And they clearly keep showing examples of why there's overemphasis on offense and none on defense. You can't win football games that way.
I 100% agree with you. Just to give some reference, USC was 106 in total. Look, and I've already said this before, but it kind of comes to a point where it's coming second nature because we talk about USC, 106 in total defense, 124th on third down, 94th in scoring, 112th in passing yards allowed, 80th in rush defense. The only good thing that they were in the top 50 of, Joe, or top 55, was they the 52nd ranked red zone defense. It's not good enough. I'm with you there. I agree with you. I don't think that you can't have that type of defense and win not only national championships, you can't win conference championships a lot of times when your defense is that bad. Don't take this the wrong way, but I agree with your last statement when you said these other teams play defense. But you know what else they do? When something's going bad, okay, fan bases around the country will look at a bad situation and scream from the rafters that things got to get better. What do I mean by that? Ohio State, last season, 126 in red zone defense.
Mm-hmm.
What are they talking about in the offseason? We got to get better at stopping teams once they get to the 20. With your team, Notre Dame, 130th at 131 teams in red zone defense. What has Marcus Freeman talked about a lot this offseason, and rightfully so. Look, Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day have looked themselves in the mirror and said, look, I know that we're giving up yardage, but we got to get better in the red zone, right? And the fans understand that. People understand that. They know what they have to do to be better. At some point, Lincoln's got to make a decision. If I'm a USC fan, which I don't hate USC, as much as people label me as a USC hater alongside you, I don't hate USC. College football is better when USC is good. It's just facts. You won't get to that next level with Alex Grinch. You just won't. Joe, the numbers don't lie when they're this bad. Yeah. Okay? When I'm comparing you to Colorado defensively, you know you've made some bad decisions.
No, exactly. And I think that we have repeated this already often, and it's April. It's only April, and I think we're going to keep repeating it.
And it gets exhausting.
It gets exhausting, and if you're not going to fire Alex Grinch, I don't know how you don't seek out support. You know, why is there no decision made to bring in an analyst on the defensive side of the football?
They did. They made a couple of hires, but they're not good enough hires to where you can go out. So
they didn't make headlines. Those hires didn't make very many headlines. Because
the
Kingsbury one made bigger headlines than those.
Well, again, when you talk about these teams, okay, specifically like a Georgia or an Alabama or whoever it may be, you know who those senior analysts are? Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp was a senior analyst for Kirby Smart. Now, I'm going to throw this your way. You're not going to agree.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between Will Muschamp's career and Kliff Kingsbury's career? What's the real?
That's a good point. Actually,
I know that Will Muschamp had a season where they had 10 wins.
Yeah,
I know one's on offense, one's on defense. What's the difference?
Admittedly, there's not much of a difference. I believe though that with Muschamp, he was a little bit more recently removed from being a defensive coordinator, and I get the rehabilitation process of getting back into the landscape of being a coach. You know, getting back into the swing of things after being so aggressively removed from the scene. Is it the route that Kliff is going? Is that what has to be done, that he needs to start out as an analyst? I do think that Muschamp is a much more proven defensive coordinator, though, than Kingsbury was as an offensive coordinator. What's the long-term play here? Does Kingsbury get hired as the offensive coordinator next year?
Here's what I think the long-term play could be. This is why you make hires like this. Does Lincoln Riley know that he's got to take a step back and be more of a CEO? I think here's my opinion. Okay. Mm-hmm. My opinion is Lincoln finally has come to the conclusion that he might need to take a step back. And I think ultimately, if things work out the way that I think Lincoln ultimately would want them to, Kliff takes over the offense. Maybe Alex Grinch is still there, or somebody new takes over the defense, and he can be a CEO. That's what I believe. Now, I don't know that. I'm not in that meeting room. I'm not covering that team. I don't have somebody close to Lincoln Riley. I don't know that. That's what it feels like to me. When coaches make those type of hires, that's normally what they do them for. When you make that explosive of a hire, like we literally seen Saban do it a couple times. We just saw Kirby Smart do it with Mike Bobo. We just saw Brian Kelly do it with John Jancic. Mm-hmm. Like we see this across. We saw Ryan Day do it. I think once, I forget the man's name. Maybe he didn't do it, but we've seen Jim Harbaugh do it. We've seen dudes do this before. I just think that's what they're trying to go to. That doesn't mean Lincoln's not going to spend all of his time on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. I just think that it allows him to take that step back that maybe he wants. Now, if that's the case and that's the truth, then I do believe that that's a good play for them. I don't think Lincoln Riley's Kliff Kingsbury's a bad offensive play caller. I really don't.
I'm not saying he's a bad one. I just think he's extremely overhyped. It's painted as if he's this offensive savant, that he's this unstoppable offensive force. But one thing we've witnessed with Kliff Kingsbury, he's terrible at making adjustments. I think he knows how to run the air raid to a team.
I can't disagree with that.
He is one of the worst coaches I've ever seen that is unwilling to make halftime adjustments. He lets teams adapt to him and then sits in the mud and lets himself get knocked around. I don't think that Kliff is as good as he is made up to be. He's an above average offensive coordinator. He's not an elite one. And he's benefited from some pretty positive situations that I think set him up for the success and the eventual hiring that he got as the Texas Tech head coach and the Arizona Cardinals head coach.
Well, so look, he's had situations where he has massively, and I'm talking about massively, underachieved. He's had too many good quarterbacks to going 13-16 with Patrick Mahomes.
That's
can
terrible.
You get a 9? Can you have an 8-win season? Can you have a 9-win season? Like that's abysmal. Okay, being 30-40 as a head coach in the SEC in college football, that is abysmal. Being 19-35 with the Cardinals, that's abysmal. Okay, 28-38 and 1 in the NFL is abysmal. He's 19-35 in the Big 12.
It's not even a hard conference.
No, and it isn't. But again, I always make the distinction. I'm not asking him to be the head coach. I'm just asking him to call plays. And I think that there's a massive difference there. I like the hire. I do think it makes him better because here's the truth. When Lincoln's spending all his time with Caleb Williams during the season, the 5-star kid that they just signed and got committed, what's his name again?
Malachi Nelson.
Malachi Nelson. Kliff Kingsbury's not a bad guy to have around him to teach him either.
That's a fair point. I don't disagree with that.
Let's just say that they could do much worse in bringing in a senior analyst than Kliff Kingsbury.